Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. We begin this morning with limbo in Washington as we inch closer to a potential government shutdown with little progress being made on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, the government will shut down at 12:01 a.m. Sunday if they don't reach a deal, something that looks increasingly likely. There is a procedural vote expected in the Senate today to move forward on a temporary government funding bill that would postpone a shutdown until November, but the outlook for that is not great. The bipartisan measure has been criticized by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who is having a lot of trouble with his own party on reaching a deal. He, however, is blaming Democrats and President Biden for a lack of a resolution. President Biden saying he doesn't believe a shutdown is inevitable. McCarthy saying House Republicans are still working on it.
The House is working on passing 73% of all the appropriation bills of the job we're supposed to do by Thursday. We're bringing up on Friday ability to fund the government, but at the same time secure our border. So yes, we're doing our job.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with the latest on this. Julie, good morning to you. So break it down for us. What kind of movement can we expect to see today in the Senate regarding this stopgap bill trying to make its way through that chamber? Outlook, not so good.
Yeah, not so good, guys. We're just days away. Look, the clock is ticking. And even if the Senate manages to get this CR, this short-term government funding bill, which we believe they will, through the Senate, you heard from McCarthy there, he's probably not going to put it on the floor. He wants his own bill, a conservative measure that has border security provisions attached to it, to ride through the House. The problem is, I talked to multiple members last night. It's still not clear if he has the votes for even that bill. So McCarthy right now still contending with members of his own party to get anything through to them. Of course, then it has to go over to the Democrat-controlled Senate and vice versa before anything can be signed by President Biden. So for our viewers watching this at home, both chambers are still having trouble passing their individual bills. Ultimately, this will need to come to a resolution that could pass both chambers, but we're still quite far from that.
So, Julie, we know House Speaker McCarthy suggested a meeting with President Biden would be important. The White House rejected that idea, saying the issue is really up to Republicans to fix. So what are the biggest challenges McCarthy's facing right now in the House?
Yeah, look, President Biden has made it clear he's probably not going to sit down with the speaker. He met with him and his team back during those debt ceiling negotiations at the end of May. This is really something that Biden is saying is McCarthy's problem. It's his problem with his members and his conference to figure out. McCarthy touched on this yesterday. Take a listen to what he said, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Has the Senate passed an FAA bill? No, they have not. When we look at a challenge on the border, have they passed any bill themselves? They're a different body on something to deal with the border, even though the leader from the Senate comes from New York and his governor and mayor are crying for something to be done. No, they've done nothing on it, because had they passed a bill, the House has passed a bill, we could go to conference and solve that.
So there's no time to go to conference between both sides, right? We heard this time and time again. McCarthy wants basically the Senate and the House to get together and to talk about these individual bills that they passed. We have just days left. And on the border security issue, that's something you hear from Republicans a lot. I talked to a top House Democrat yesterday who told me that what Republicans want to attach in terms of border security is, quote, not real border security. And the White House is also making the argument that if a shutdown happens, Border Patrol agents could go unpaid. And what Republicans are planning to do does cut some of the budget that the Department of Homeland Security would have to operate. So really a stalemate here, an impasse on both sides. But ultimately, McCarthy's going to have to show that he can get something passed with just his members.
And Julie, let's talk about the perspective of Americans who will be affected by this potential shutdown. Who's winning the PR battle here? Who do you think will take the blame if this happens?
Well, historically, guys, Republicans do fall for the blame when a shutdown happens. The last shutdown, you'll remember, lasted more than a month under the former president. In 2019, there was a new poll that came out. You see it on your screen where voters are kind of split. They are blaming Biden and Democrats in Congress for this as well, because ultimately Democrats drew control of the White House and the upper chamber of the Senate. But look, this would really be devastating for millions of Americans. You showed a graphic earlier when we were talking here. I mean, millions of Americans will go without paychecks. Million more of low-income Americans won't have food stamps, won't have critical child care programs. And look, we have a lot of authorizations that are up at the month, too, like the FAA, for example, various child care tax credits, some COVID relief measures that were put in place. So a lot on the line here and not a lot of time to fix it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.